Hi, this is Doug from Dynamic Computing, and welcome to episode 37 of 10-Minute Amiga Retrocast, the 1-year anniversary special. It's really hard to believe that it's already been a year that I've been doing this. It all started back in April of 2018 when I started pulling some of my old Amiga equipment out of storage. I hadn't used it in quite a long time, started playing around with it. Now, this was at the exact time that Amiga.org was down for maintenance, and nobody knew if it was ever going to come back down or come back up. It was down for months. That had been my only real connection to the Amiga community for years. I would check on it every couple of months. I would log in and just lurk around and see what was going on in the community, but I didn't do much else with my Amiga stuff over the years. When Amiga.org was down, and with me just getting back into the Amiga, I was forced to look elsewhere for things about the Amiga in the Amiga community. So, I'm glad it was down, because I discovered all of the fantastic Facebook groups, all of the fantastic people on English Amiga Board, on Lemon Amiga, on my friend Eric's AmigaLove.com. I'll put links to all of those right here. And realized that there were still tens of thousands of people that were actively involved in the Amiga community, and I had no idea about it. I'd also known that AmigaKit was still in business. I'd pop onto their site, once, twice a year, just to look and see if they were still around. But I kind of assumed they were about the last one that was out there, the last Amiga vendor. I'd also discovered, after this, that there were a ton of Amiga vendors still doing business in the United States a little bit, but mostly in Europe. And so I got excited again about the Amiga community. And I tried to think of a way that I could contribute to the community, because that's just the kind of guy that I am. I thought about programming. I got some ideas in my head about a game that I wanted to create. And then I realized, Doug, you really are no good at programming, and you're absolutely no good at computer graphics. So that was out the window. I started watching some older YouTube videos, like Dan Wood's from Retro Hour, Modern Vintage Gamer, Retro Man Cave, The Amigos, and the Guru Meditation. And I began to get an idea. Now, all of those YouTubers, in general, the people that I was watching would cover the Amiga a little bit, and then they'd cover some other platforms, which is great, and it's all very fascinating. But only the guys from the Amigos Podcast, John and Aaron, would definitely cover just the Amiga. And then the Guru Meditation would cover 98% Amiga stuff. So I saw a niche and I jumped at it. There were quite a few other Amiga-centric YouTubers out there too, but they generally concentrated solely on Amiga gaming, which is awesome, but that whole aspect was already covered. Now, I do have to throw out a specific thank you to Lorfarius from AmigaRama Podcast. Last year, when I was just getting into this, I spent about 3 weeks just going back from episode 1 to his current episode at the time and listening to his Amiga podcast about Amiga gaming. And I just loved him, and it really got me pumped up for wanting to do something in a similar vein with the community. So Keith Lorfarius was quite an influence on me getting back into this, and he's also become quite a good friend too. Speaking of that, I've made lots of new friends in the Amiga community in the last year. Some of them I've met in person, some of them I've only met virtually. There's many more. I know we're all going to get together for a beer one of these days, but there's some great people out there, and they're all really, really friendly, and thanks everybody. So I began discussing with my 14-year-old son Daniel, who's been on a couple of episodes, about starting my own YouTube channel. He was all for it, being 14 of course. So in July of 2018, I started putting together some test videos, testing out video, testing out audio, getting some ideas. And in August of 2018, I released my actual first 10-minute Amiga Retrocast video. I honestly thought I had it in my head that these episodes would be 8 to 12 minutes long, and I would be able to cover everything I wanted in that short span of time. One of my points of the series was a lot of videos go on and on for 30, 45 minutes with great content, but we don't always have time to spend that kind of time watching a video, and I wanted to just put something out short and sweet. So I've done some 10-minute videos, I honestly have. I think I even did an 8-minute one time. But I learned very quickly, in order to cover the content the way I wanted to cover it, 10 minutes wasn't going to cover it, all right? The sweet spot seems to be about 18 to 25 minutes to get everything covered that I want covered. To be honest, I record about an hour of coverage for each episode, and then I edit it down to the 18 to 25 minute mark. Now, I'm not going to change the name. It's going to stay 10-minute Amiga Retrocast because I think the name is catchy, and it's kind of gotten to be a nice, good-natured joke in the Amiga community. 10 minutes? Sure, yeah, that's right, 10 minutes. My goal was to cover Amiga software and Amiga hardware, something that has been a bit overlooked over the years on YouTube channels. Now, Bill and Anthony from the Guru Meditation, they did a great job of covering software and hardware over the years, but there weren't that many more that were exclusive to the Amiga. So the first few months of the videos I created, there's lots of dabbling with lighting, lots of dabbling with audio, trying to get things perfect. It takes time to figure out exactly what you're doing to make it better. And I promise you things will continue to get better as time goes on too. So a few months after I got back into the Amiga community, I started thinking, I had a VIC-20 when I was a kid. I used to do a ton of stuff with my Commodore 64 in the mid-80s. So I got onto eBay, picked myself up a VIC-20, then I bought another VIC-20. Then I needed to replace my Commodore 64 that wasn't working. And boy, I've always wanted a Commodore 128, so I got 2 of them. Then a Plus 4, and then an SX64, which I absolutely love. And before I knew it, I was back full bore into the 8-bit side of things too. So what's a guy going to do? He's going to start an 8-bit channel. So as a sub-channel of 10-minute Amiga Retrocast, I have the Chicken Head Chronicles, where I cover a lot of the old 8-bit equipment. I do new game reviews on there for the brand new things for the VIC-20 and Commodore 64. I dabble a little bit in some old games too, mostly just playing them with my son. I do hardware reviews. I do software reviews. I've been trying to do about 2 8-bit videos per month. It's been 1 or 2 that I do. But I want to get that up to a weekly thing. My thought is maybe on Wednesdays I release an 8-bit video, and over the weekend I would release a little bit longer and more in-depth Amiga Retrocast video. Now, I don't see any problem doing that because I have enough ideas in my head and written down to probably do about a year's worth of episodes before I run out of ideas for either channel. Now, this is an expensive thing. You might think just running YouTube channel would be free because YouTube is free, but it's not. There's equipment to buy, audio equipment, video equipment. There's hosting to worry about. There's the time that it takes. A 15-minute video takes 4-6 hours of time to get everything put together, writing the scripts, shooting the video, editing and editing and editing and editing. And then, of course, I have to buy the hardware that I'm reviewing. This Amiga 2000 that I have over here, that wasn't free. All the hardware in it wasn't free. I got to buy that before I can review it. So in the past couple of months, I've monetized my YouTube channel. I don't see any harm in that. Not too many people are going to get rich off of monetized YouTube channels until you get a couple 100,000 subscribers, but it helps. It helps cover a few of the monthly costs. I have been playing around with ideas of Patreon. I was against it at first, but the more I got into it, the more I realized, I see where these guys are coming from, wanting to have people support them a little bit with Patreon. So I'm playing with that idea. I'm also playing with the idea like the Retro Hour does, where you've got a tip jar type of thing, a little PayPal tip jar. And if people feel they want to help support you, great, throw a couple bucks in. But we'll see where that goes. So what is the future of 10-Minute Amiga Retrocast? Well, first of all, I want to start doing more reviews for 8-bit games and software. I've got a plan for reviewing a bunch of VIC-20 software. I absolutely love the VIC-20. And doing 3.8-minute videos to equal the 3.8 kilobytes of RAM that our original VIC-20 has. Just something short and sweet, and introduce the game, little bit of a playthrough, talk about its history, and move on. I think those would be kind of fun, and they'd be easy to do. I also want to keep doing reviews of brand new games that come out for the VIC-20 and the Commodore 64. I don't really review old ones, I just do a couple of playthroughs with my son on some of the old ones. But I like to do reviews on the brand new games for the C64 and the VIC-20. I've got a nice big 3 or maybe even 4-part series already being scheduled for GEOS on the Commodore 64 and especially on the Commodore 128. Absolutely awesome operating system. You can do a ton of stuff with it, and there's not enough time spent on YouTube channels on GEOS. I also want to dig a little bit deeper into CPM, maybe 1 or 2 episodes on digging into CPM on the Commodore 128. There's thousands of programs available for that, but they're a big pain to find and to get on your Commodore unless you know what you're doing. I want to help with that with some tutorials. And I've got my beautiful, beautiful Commodore Plus 4 that I absolutely love, that I really want to dig deep into and do a good full review on the Commodore Plus 4. It's a great computer, believe it or not. On the 10-minute Amiga Retrocast side of things, I have a lot more tutorials planned. Those seem to be very popular. A lot more with Amiga OS 3.1.4 and the newer operating systems that are coming out for it. And with my new Amiga 2000 I have a Video Toaster 2000 that I have installed in there, and it's working perfect. This is why I have all these wall of monitors up here. I've got 3 different monitors up here, all dedicated to the toaster, really. And I've been training myself on how to use it, and I figure we've got 3 or 4 episodes just on Video Toaster and Video Toaster tutorials. And one great news is when I do the Amiga 2000 Video Toaster review, I've got Amiga Bill on board to help me out with his take on the Video Toaster. While we're on the topic of my Amiga 2000, because of its expandability, I've got big plans for it. I've got my Commodore A2386 bridge board, which has a 386 processor on it, and I'm planning on putting that in my Amiga and getting DOS and Windows loaded on that, and also Shapeshifter, which allows me to run the Mac operating system on there. So this puppy will be able to run Macintosh, PC stuff, and Amiga stuff simultaneously. I think that'll make for a fun episode. And my Amiga 3000 has a lot of potential too. My friend Jack from Pints and Amiga, who you should watch his gaming channel, he has a lot of fun stuff on there, generally on Saturdays, sent me a great drive tray for my Amiga 3000. If you saw my Amiga 3000 video, it was missing the drive tray, so I made a plexiglass one. It worked okay, but it just wasn't right. So he sent me a real one. Thanks, Jack. You the man. So I'll be doing a lot more with my Amiga 3000 in the future. The biggest issue is I just don't have any room to put it. My office is so full. I don't know where I'm going to put my Amiga 3000. There's also been a huge influx of Amiga games. I just mentioned a few minutes ago that I leave the Amiga games to AmigaRama and Amiga Bill on his Twitch channel, and my friends John and Aaron from the Amigos. I'll link to all their sites here again. They take care of almost all of the Amiga gaming that we need to worry about. But there's so much new stuff coming out, I almost feel obligated to cover some of it. So I'm thinking on doing a little bit more with new Amiga games, not the old stuff, just the new stuff. A good example of that is this game, Vegetables. This is the same game that Mike Richmond just released, and it will be shipping in a couple of weeks for the Commodore 64 through my friends at Double-Sided Games. He's now working on an Amiga port of it, and it's absolutely gorgeous. I've been having a blast playing it. It's not done yet. It's just in beta form right now. There's a lot of things that don't work, but man, it's a lot of fun. But it'd be nice to be able to cover some of this new stuff too. Now, to solve this, I have this idea in my head to do a twice monthly news program, 10-minute Amiga Retrocast news program, using the video toaster to emulate kind of an 80s style news program. Something lighthearted, something fun, but with real information in it. So let me know if you like the idea, because I'm really thinking it could be a fun little project. I'm also quite interested in your opinions. So if you have ideas for me, if you have things you want me to cover, email me, douglas@dctechaz.com. I'll put that down here. Reach out to me on Twitter @10mark1. Find me. I'd love to hear from all of you. Now, on to part 2 of this video. I've been thinking of ways to get the community more involved for a couple of months, and I thought the 1-year anniversary would be a good time to do this. I started thinking about all of the interest in Vicky, Pixel Vixen, as most of you know her, all the interest that she's garnered up with her art tutorials and all the great work that she's been doing on her channel. So I reached out to Vicky a few weeks ago and asked her if she'd like to help me with a little project. And that little project is an Amiga art contest. She liked the idea, so we came up with a couple of categories for the art contest. Category number 1, any hand-drawn Amiga art using any Amiga art program that you want to. Doesn't really matter. Number of colors doesn't matter. Format doesn't matter, as long as it's hand-drawn, something that you created yourself. Number 2, photo editing on the Amiga. There's some great programs. There's AdPro. There's, what's the other one? Image Effects. There's Grim that I've been talking a lot about on my channel that do incredible jobs of bringing in your photos and doing photo editing. Now, I'm not just talking about bringing them in and sending them to me. Do something fun. Do something creative with the photographs to really make them pop, but just make sure it's all done on the Amiga. The third category would be ray tracing and 3D. The Amiga was a champion of this back in the 80s. They did ray tracing before anybody knew what ray tracing was. I remember, I think it was my senior year in high school, my computer science teacher, I was talking to him about my Amiga that I had and the fact that I was playing around with ray tracing on it. And he's like, what's ray tracing? I have no idea what that is. And the Amiga was doing these things before people even knew what it was. So if you've got a good Amiga ray tracer, there's some free ones out there. Let's see what you can do with some nice 3D ray traced images. Send them to me. Again, format doesn't matter. 2-color graphics, 256 color, 256,000 color, 24-bit, doesn't matter, as long as it's done on the Amiga. That's all that matters. Email me the pictures. IFF format is preferred, but other formats are fine too. If you can't do that, send me a screenshot of it. We'll work with what we have to work with. You can send them to my email address, douglas@dctechaz.com. I'll put that down here. Make sure you tell me which category it's in. Make sure you tell me how you created it, what programs you used, and a little bit about the Amiga that you created it on. And if you created it in WinUAE on the Amiga, great, have fun with that. If you created it on the Amiga 1 with Amiga OS 4.1, more power to you. Send it on in. And then, once we get these millions and millions of submissions in, Vicky and I will carefully go through and probably do eeny, meeny, miny, mo, something scientific like that, and pick the best pictures from each category and select a winner from those categories. And what do these winners receive as a prize? Well, a brand new sealed copy of Personal Paint 7.3C from Aeon. These were graciously donated by my friends at Amiga on the Lake, who are also part of this project. Who is Amiga on the Lake? Let's learn a little bit more about them. Now, the last Amiga shop in the United States that I remember is Software Hut out of Pennsylvania. They did a great job. They supported the Amiga for years after it was gone. But I think maybe a decade or so ago, they finally gave up the ghost and they quit the business. Everything had to come out of Europe after that. Last year, I started hearing about this company, Amiga on the Lake. They specialized in the Amiga 1 hardware and the Amiga OS 4.1 software. And you know what? I didn't care. The hardware's too expensive. I didn't want to drop $2,500 just to run an old operating system that has barely been upgraded in the past 10 years. I'd rather spend the $2,500 on this old Amiga equipment to run an operating system that hasn't been updated in 30 years. Seriously though, after that, I heard they started supporting the Kipper 2K Amiga 500 keyboard project. Then they started bringing out more 68K hardware that they were selling right out of their store. Next thing I know, they're a full-blown Amiga hardware store for both new Amiga equipment and older Amiga equipment. It's fantastic. Jeff and Aaron, the people who own the company, are fantastic guys. They are responsive, they are attentive to their customers, which is something other Amiga companies could learn from. If you live in North America, absolutely 100% check these guys out. I'll have links all over the place for them. I'm sure they ship internationally too. Now, if you live in Europe, you know there's already a lot of really great Amiga companies there. And again, I'll link to my Amiga vendors list that I created, the video I created a couple of months ago. And the information on there is still fairly accurate. But for now, let's learn a little more about Amiga on the Lake from the guys themselves. Take it away, Jeff and Aaron.
Hello, this is Aaron Smith from Amiga on the Lake, and we'd like to thank Doug for the opportunity to talk about ourselves a little bit. So my first computer was a Commodore 64 in the early 80s, and later on I kind of got away from it, and I met this gentleman back in 1992, and we did all types of talk about computers, and I wanted to get another computer. And I ended up buying a Macintosh Classic 2, which is the last computer that Apple made that had literally a black and white screen. And it was a great computer. I had a lot of fun with it, but I still found myself buying Amiga magazines because I was either going to get an Amiga or a Mac. And I ended up getting the Mac. I got a really good price on that. But I still kept buying the magazines. And it wasn't until basically it wasn't 19. It was actually 2013 that I read the book by Brian Bagnall about, Commodore, a company on the edge. And, when it got to the calculator section, I'm like, oh, I didn't know Commodore made calculators. So I went to eBay and, like a crazy person, bought a bunch of calculators. In the back of my head, I knew the Commodore 64 was coming, and I knew the Amiga was coming. And I'd never owned an Amiga. So when the Commodore 64 came up, I got excited about that, went back to eBay and spent money like a crazy man, and then finally the Amiga made an appearance, and I went back to eBay and really went crazy, went wild with it. And
every day I came in there for a stretch, there was something new for him to show me. Look what arrived from eBay.
Yeah, it really is. It's a sickness. And then I bought the Amiga 1 X1000, and really that was the first Amiga. I know some people don't think of that as an Amiga because it's not a classic original Amiga. But that was the first Amiga that I actually really had a lot of interaction with and used. And I've got 9 500s, 2 600s, 4 1200s, 2 3000s, 2 4000s, 3 1000s. So I, had certainly gone crazy. And slowly but surely I began to play with those, and it's just fun. But at one point, I started counting how much money I had spent, and I stopped. I'm guessing somewhere around the halfway point. I'm not really sure because I just stopped and I realized, really, I really enjoy this. This is a lot of fun. Maybe we should start a company. And that was really how Amiga on the Lake was born. And it's a real pleasure. It's really, really fun to give customers something that we love and we know they're going to love. And it's an enjoyable experience. So we have, of course, classic Amigas. In fact, we have about 20 new products for Classic Amiga that we have yet to get up. So hopefully this weekend we're going to be taking care of that. And as Doug jokingly, humorously said, they're selling some other kind of computer, an Atari. I don't know what that is.
What is that thing?
Yeah, so we do sell Atari stuff, 16-bit and 8-bit. We have a few actually new products for 8 and 16-bit that we have to get up. We're going to be expanding in the color computer, the Apple II, Classic Mac, and we're going to expand the retro line because retro is really big right now. And of course, we enjoy all those platforms. There's something unique and interesting about each one. But Amiga is obviously our root product, and will always remain that way. And well, why don't you?
Sure. I'm Jeff Yoder. Same kind of passion for machines. My interest goes all the way back to when I was in high school. Wanted to get a ZX81 kit, and that was when I was a junior, senior when they came out. Well, that had to wait. I went in the Air Force pretty early, right out of high school, and one of the first things I purchased was right from the UK, from Sinclair Research, was the kit for $100 that I had to put together. I had to wait 6-7 weeks for it to arrive. Quickly put it together. It actually ran the first time, so I saved myself $50, and had a lot of fun with the 4K of RAM until that, I saturated the use of that, and then got the memory expansion for it, and started having a lot of fun with Z80 machine language, of course, trying to squeeze as much power and fun out of it. And then I ended up with a roommate who had a C64, and we used to have a lot of fun with that. So that was my first introduction to the Commodore line. But for some reason, I fell in love with the 6809 microprocessor, and I found out that's what was in the Tandy color computer. So my first one was a color computer 2, and I quickly graduated to the color computer 3 because I found out it ran something that was very similar to an operating system running servers and workstations. It was called OS9, and that really kind of charged me up. So I had a lot of fun with that. It was multitasking, multi-user. I was able to get the 512K RAM for the Coco 3, and so you can imagine I had a roommate with a C64, I had a color computer, lots of arguments and battles of which one was better at what. But they both had their areas where...
Missed those days.
Missed those days, yeah, actually, because we learned a lot from each machine, and we found out that, different visions at different companies, and each machine had its strengths and weaknesses. So learned a lot from both camps, and then started getting more into the IBM PC compatibles, unfortunately. But yes, exactly. But kept with my color computer and my ZX81. Never got a ZX Spectrum. My first introduction to Amiga was until many years later. I had gotten out of the Air Force.
Well, let me save you a little bit of embarrassment about the PC thing. He ran OS2.
I did. Windows 3.1 wasn't cutting it for me, so I jumped to OS2, and IBM let me down, unfortunately, in only I think 3 or 4 short years of using that. But I ended up jumping over to Linux. So I don't know if that's a saving grace or not, but I jumped to Linux and started running that on
It's not
PCs.
Windows.
It's not Windows. And fortunately, it wasn't OS2. But again, I had a pretty sour taste in my mouth with IBM after they, just left that. They didn't market it very well. We all know the history of that. It's ugly. So anyway, my first brush with Amiga was when I started working at a company called United Radio here in Syracuse, New York. I was a bench technician, repairing radios every day, that type of thing, honing my skills at quick repairs, quick, accurate repairs. So I learned a lot, but I learned a lot from this guy. He was an Amiga fanatic. He had a bedroom sequestered, and it had a lot of Amigas in it. And we had a store down in the Syracuse area called Industrial Color Labs that had a whole section of nothing but Amiga, because they did a lot of their photo processing and video editing with Video Toaster and Amiga 4000s. So they were big with selling Amiga and stuff. So I got my Amiga bug started there. I just never got around to buying one, and because I always was able to go to his house and play and learn. And then we kind of separated. I left from United Radio, went and got another job, and a better one with even more geeky electronics going on, and kind of just separated a bit from Amiga for a while. And then I met I've known Aaron for many years, but his Amiga bug started back up, and that got me going again. And of course, he covered that history. And so for the last 3 years, we've tried to have a go at turning a hobby in a what some people would consider a lunatic marginal fascination with a so-called dead computer line.
Nothing could be better.
Into a business, but mostly in a desire to help other people acquire interesting, add-ons and keep the classic Amigas going. Of course, we wanted to push the new gen forward, the next generation. That was kind of like the core of that. The main spark was like new, running on a Power PC. So that's kind of what we really kind of wanted to start with. But we've branched out. We've had a lot of people in the beginning go, well, you really should look into classic. I mean, there's a lot of people out there in North America that would really like someone local, more local than Europe, to get those add-ons, these neat devices that so many smart, innovative people have been creating. So here we are. So basically, in a nutshell, we have the passion, and we're trying to provide as many people that are into it these devices and these products. And I'm hoping we're doing good. We try to be very responsive with orders, get them out the door. It's a two-man operation. It's part-time. We both have full-time daytime jobs. Our secret little dream is to turn this into a full-time job. I wouldn't mind getting up every morning. I'd love to I'd love to start doing recaps on the classic Amigas, but right now there's just no way I can do that in an appropriate amount of time.
But yeah, we're growing, and we certainly can build this into something that we really believe we could make a living at. And what will be more fun? I mean, it would be fantastic. We don't take any money from the company.
No.
So when we sell products, the little profit that we do make, we put that away and continue growing the business and getting more stuff. And we have a lot of stuff to put up, and Jeff is really hard at work on our keyboards, and they're going great.
I've been very busy with that. There's a lot of work to be done. But we want to honor what we said we would do for our pre-orders, and I got a process down, so that'll pick up. So very soon we'll be shipping our first ones out. Hopefully this week, before the end of this week. Yeah,
before you watch this video, we'll probably have shipped. We'll probably have shipped the first batch, and then it's really going to go on fire. And we do have, of course, we have a bunch of products that we haven't put up that we're working on, and we do have a new product for Classic Amiga, and Doug, I think, is going to be demoing that for the first time. So we're not going to actually make that go live on our store until Doug's video of that comes out, and I'm not even going to mention the name of the product.
No, but we'll let him have the fanfare.
So Doug, thank you for allowing us the opportunity to speak a little bit. Hopefully we didn't go too long, and I guess over to you, Doug. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Thanks, guys, for the great intro to your company. It's fantastic to hear about your past, your history, and what you're planning on for the future of the company. This is just awesome, and I'm just so happy that I can be part of it and help you guys out too. I'm also very excited about the new product that they mentioned. I'm going to be reviewing that hopefully in a couple of weeks. I can't tell you what it is, but I think you'll like it. It's pretty cool. Thank you so much to all of my supporters, all of my subscribers, all of my friends that I've made over the past year. Thank you for going along with me on this journey on 10-Minute Amiga Retrocast. I plan on doing it for the foreseeable future. So until next time, this is Doug from 10-Minute Amiga Retrocast, signing out.